Everyone, we are live in the Wildcat Alley with Joseph Decker and Jonathan Williams. We are excited to come back to you tonight, this Sunday night, and bring back one of our own from Edmonson County, Major League Baseball player, former Wildcat, Edmonson County, former Wildcat at the University of Kentucky, Joseph Blanton. We'll get to him in just a little bit. But first, Joseph Decker, tell me what's going on with you. You've had a busy week.
It has been a busy week. Attended the KHSAA Sweet 16 for the boys tournament. Attended the March Madness for Western Kentucky Friday, and then finished it off with the state tournament yesterday and was at an AAU tournament today. So it's been a really busy schedule this weekend for basketball, but I've been really hyped and happy for this week's episode of the Wildcat Alley. We're going to be joined with Joseph Blanton. So it's going to be a good one.
Yeah, it's exciting. Really appreciate Joseph making the time to visit with us, and we're really excited about welcoming him on tonight. I knew Joseph a long time ago. We were in middle school together, high school together, so we're really looking forward to catching up with him. But first, I want to share a few things with everyone. Our technology sponsors tonight are Braden's Blessings and Lake Forest Recruiting. Lake Forest Recruiting is they're a company that connects the highest skilled mental health counselors with high quality positions across the country. And then Braden's Blessings is a local charity in the name of Braden Combs. He was my cousin that passed away in 2019 at the age of 19. And Allison and Shannon and their family has done a great job doing some good to keep his name alive. So we appreciate them. And then obviously we are in Rafferty's Studios, sponsored by Scott Lindsay and Rafferty's Double Dog. Scott does a lot for our local community, sponsors our Christmas tournament. And then CNA Plumbing's our guest sponsors. Morris Promo and Design Tees are our show sponsors, and Kevin Alexander is our text line sponsor. I'll share more about them a little bit later. But I want to talk about Joseph. I've not caught up with Joseph for several years now, so I'm excited about it. And, you know, when I emailed him about coming on the show, I was telling him about you, Joseph, and about your aspirations to do sports marketing and podcasting. And I said, it may sound silly, but, this kid wants to make a career of it. And his response was, and I won't quote it, but his response was, I'm sure people thought it was silly for a kid from Edmonson County to have a career in the majors. Let's do it. And so I really appreciate him taking the time. For all of you that don't know, I know most of you do know, Joseph grew up here in the collegiate community. He went to the University of Kentucky and pitched there 3 seasons. And his last season, he led the SEC in strikeouts with 133. Joseph was selected by the Oakland Athletics with the 24th pick in the Major League Baseball draft. He made his Major League Baseball debut September the 21st, 2004 versus the Texas Rangers. He played for 7 Major League teams over, 13 years, played in the World Series and won the World Series in 2008, hitting a home run in that game in Game 4. Now Joseph, I think he's been retired since 2017. I've been doing some research and catching up on what's been going on with him. He now is a vineyard owner. He's married to his wife, Leandra, and their children. They live in Napa Valley, California. And so without any further ado, I want to welcome Mr. Joseph Blanton on the show. Joseph, can you hear us?
I can. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Awesome.
How you been doing, man?
Good. How are you?
Doing good. It's been a day or two since I've seen you.
It's been a few. Yes.
I was just thinking, I was telling my mom and dad about you coming on the show, and I was thinking back to, I was like, what was my first memory of Joseph Blanton? And it was in Tracy Meredith's PE class. You were the teacher assistant, and I was in the class. And I remember there was a big hurt. People that know me know I've got a pretty photographic memory. I remember a Frank Thomas T-shirt that you wore. And I was like, man, that's a cool T-shirt. And I got to talking. Of course, you were great to me, and we became friends from there. And, man, I was thinking back, that's the first memory. and then I can go through lots of other memories. But it's been a few days since we've got to catch up. I believe the last time I saw you was at the University of Kentucky, University of Louisville football game when you were at UK. I was up there and we talked for a few minutes. Obviously, you've had quite a career, but update all the folks around Evanston County and all those watching. What's been going on with you since you retired?
You hit on it earlier. Basically, 3 kids, chasing them around. Just got back from practice in 2 games today. So timing worked out pretty well as far as that one goes. And then, like you said, living in Napa, got a vineyard making wine. But for the most part, chasing kids around. You know how that goes. All 3 playing sports. So just trying to figure out what they're doing, what their schedules are, and try to help them, try to learn the game a little bit.
Yeah. So tell us about, how old are your children?
14, 13, 11. So I have a freshman,
Okay.
a 7th grader, and a 5th grader. 2 girls.
And it's hard to believe because, 2 girls and a boy. Awesome.
Yep.
It's hard to believe because, my oldest one's 16 and she just got her permit a few months ago. And it's kind of weird to have a child that's driving. I mean, I remember when I got my permit. It's not been that long ago.
I know, right? It doesn't feel like that long ago. Yeah, they're
listen,
getting
I'll
older,
introduce
right?
you
They
to
get in high school, everything changes. They start, start playing sports more every day a week now, and it's you see them growing up, and it happens quick.
It sure does. It happens really quickly. I want to introduce you to another Joseph here, Joseph Decker. He's a sophomore student there at Evanston County High School. I'll let him introduce himself to you.
Hi.
It's an honor to meet you, Mr. Blanton. I didn't really get to know you. I wasn't really alive quite yet when you were here at Evanston County, but it's been a great time. Being able to hear that you were coming to be on our show, watching some of your highlights, some of your tape from when you played at Kentucky and in the MLB, of course. And I think this is going to be a great show, and I'm really glad to hear that you're here. And I'm really interested to hear more on your career, where you're at now, and everything going on. So thank you again for being here.
Yeah, no, thanks for having me. I always enjoy doing things like this. It's great.
Yeah. So Joseph came to me just real briefly. He came to me one day. I don't know if you know this or not, but I'm the principal at the high school now. I know it's probably hard to believe, but he came to me one break and was like, "Man, we've got to start the JWill and Joe show." I was like, "Man, I don't know if I can start a sports talk show with one of our students," but we thought about it, talked about it, decided to give it a go. And then here we are. He wants to be a podcaster. He wants to do sports networking. He's made some pretty good contacts. He met Oscar Combs last week. Scott Lindsay from Rafferty's took him up to the state tournament, introduced him around Lexington to some of those folks. I'm sure you know a lot of those really well. And I guess my first question would be, what would you tell Joseph and other students, that are here in little old Evanston County, but that have really big dreams? What would you say to those folks, those kids?
I forgot who it was I heard not long ago talk about that, and something about, it was a similar situation. I think to me, grew up in a small town, and how, he always said he wanted to play in the big leagues or, do this. And people are like, "Oh, you can't do that." And he was like, basically like, "Why not?" And I don't remember the exact quote, but was talking about you have to dream big, like shoot big. You're never going to do what you don't try. So what's the worst thing to happen? You try and fail. How many people don't try because they feel like they're not going to make it? That's my thing. And just like you said, I mean, how many people really thought a kid from growing up and playing, Little League in Evanston County and would ever make it that far? But you just keep, kind of put your head down, put the work in, truck along, and see what happens. I mean, that's, at the end of the day, that's what you do. You put the hard work in and give yourself a chance to do whatever it is that you're dreaming to do.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's good advice. And that's what I really expect Joseph to do that. And I hope a lot of our kids are listening. And I guess a follow-up to that question, I actually had one of our coaches send me a text earlier and want me to ask this question. So here's the question I told him I would ask. Looking back as a high school student with such big athletic goals, What advice do you give them? I know you said dream big. Is there a certain, specifically as an athlete, is it the grit? Is it the skill development? Is there any one thing? What advice would you give those kids?
Ooh, that's a good one. It's a little bit different for everybody, right? I think, and coaching kids now and seeing all the different levels, everybody kind of develops at their own age. And, some people develop when they're 12, some people 15, 16, they all have a different level where they get to either some kids it's grow, some kids it's mature, whatever it may be. Some I feel like may give up a little too early because they're not big enough when they're 12 or whatever it is. But to go with that, I mean, for me personally, it was more, I was talking with another friend of mine. It was just, and that played in the big leagues for like 9 years as well. And we were talking about how we don't want to say we were tougher, and it's not physically tougher. It was just mentally tougher. We were able to go out, we weren't good all the time. We had games where we got beat, where we weren't good, but we came back and we had the ability to kind of be a sponge, absorb information, put it to use, and kind of not give up, just keep trucking along when people either tell you, you weren't good enough, or, people pass you over for somebody else, and just use that as kind of determination to kind of keep going. I mean, the skills part is a big one. I mean, if you learn skills, that's going to really help you. Also, the more you enjoy the game, and the game being whatever that is, if it's basketball, if it's football, if it's, track, whatever it is, the more you enjoy it, the more you're willing to put the work in. And that's what it, for me, almost becomes a separator too, is willing to put the work in that other people aren't. Other people are more, oh, well, it's Friday and, I'm off from school. Let me go hang out with my friends, or let me go do this or do that. And it's like, well, have you got your work in today? And if the answer is no, it doesn't mean you can't go hang out, but you still got to get your work in. You have to have that discipline to be able to do that. I think this is one I actually speak to my kids a lot about, is the difference in motivation and discipline. You got to be motivation you only go do it when you feel like doing it. So you only wind up doing it part-time. But being disciplined is the days that I don't feel like doing it, I still go do it. And that, I feel like that's a big separator, is being disciplined at an early age. And that's a tough thing to learn. But I think that ties into, if you love doing it, it's easier to have the discipline.
Joseph, I want to ask you something. It's going more back toward your Evanston County days when you were here. What are some of your, favorite memories you experienced as a Wildcat here? If it's teachers you had in school, moments in games, really anything. What's some things that you could share about your Evanston County experience?
There's a few. I mean, gosh, I can think of a few for sure. I mean, just the small town feel for one. Actually, people here, I live in California now, but the town I live in is super small. I mean, almost as small as where I grew up in. So you kind of still have that, small town feel, which I think is great. And that's a hard thing to beat. Just being able to reconnect with everybody again, and when you go home, feel like you didn't leave. That type of thing. And then, I mean, for me, even like sense of community and pride. I was lucky enough to go on and play in college at Kentucky, where my coach was Keith Madison, who played at Evanston County as well. So like we had that, I was lucky enough to have that, and we had that connection. So I felt like, it's somebody from my hometown. I had somebody looking after me, looking out for the best of my interests. And, that kind of ties into what I said before about, having that small town feel and somebody looking out for you.
Yeah, Joseph, things weren't like they are now with social media and the internet. We didn't know everything going on with every athlete. And I don't know this, and I've been curious about this. Who all recruited you, and was it really a hard choice for you to choose Kentucky? I know, as a Kentucky boy, going to Kentucky is a big deal. So tell me about that time. I'm unaware of who you're recruited by and how all that process went.
Yeah, so it's definitely different then than it was now. I just feel like there's so much out there now. There's so much access, and having kids are starting to get older. There's college recruiters now, and they're like, oh, everybody has their own social media thing where they're basically like putting their highlights and stats and everything out there. Like you said, that didn't exist. So it was basically somebody had to find you,
Right.
somebody had to see you, had to know somebody. So for me, what I just spoke about was Coach Madison being from there. I think he found out from me because his dad, dad still lived in Emmons County and was like, hey, you should come watch this kid play. He's pretty decent. And he winds up coming watching me. Also, so that's how kind of I got recruited by Kentucky. Western Kentucky was one. I actually played with the coaches that was there at the time. His son was on my summer league team. So that's how they found about me. And then really only had like 3 major colleges kind of recruit me. And Troy State was another one in Alabama. And the pitching coach of that, or he was the head coach, I think. He was my summer league coach when I was 16. So I had like close connections to all the coaches that recruited me. And back then, like I said, it was different. You had to like go somewhere to be found. It wasn't so easy to just be out there like it is now. And making a decision, I think for me, for one, I had good relationships with the other 2 coaches. It was hard to, be in small town to kind of get away from home. I had a teammate going to Western Kentucky as well, and from summer ball, but I decided to go to Kentucky to play in the SEC. And, for me, where we grow up, Kentucky basketball is kind of just a little touchy subject right now with the tournament going on, but that's who I grew up watching, all those teams in the basketball. So that like, I felt like I belonged at that university just by growing up there. And then obviously, like I said, having somebody from that hometown being the head coach kind of felt like a good thing as well.
Joseph, you talked a little bit there about your college and colleges that reached out to you. I want to ask you, we usually ask everyone this, but it's a really hot topic. What's your thoughts on the NIL and the way college sports is now, with the transfer portal kind of taking over, and then with NIL and deals like that?
I'm kind of split on that, to be honest. I feel like the NIL is a good thing. For one, I look at it as, a former athlete, obviously, and that if I look at the major sports, let's say, you could look at somebody like Caitlin Clark right now, the quarterbacks that are in the SEC, the big basketball players, they bring in so much money because of who they are that I feel like they do deserve some of that because they're the ones bringing in, right? It's the players. If those teams aren't as good, those schools don't get as much money. So I feel like they deserve it. The transfer portal has really kind of changed everything a little bit. As an athlete, I kind of get it because sometimes you sign onto a school and it's not what they kind of presented you with, or it's the light they put on it. Like, oh, you'll come in and be a starter, and they kind of throw all these dreams at you, and then you get there and they might change it on you. So it's a good thing to be able to get out of. Mm-hmm. But on the flip side, it kind of created a little bit of the college athlete has a lot of power now, to where it's kind of created chaos with the transfer portal, and players are able to, they're making money. They're not worried about scholarships as much. They're able to transfer around, and it kind of gives them a lot of power, and kind of in a bad way, not as much of that school pride type thing that, used to be a big deal. So that kind of makes me split on it, where they kind of lose that a little bit. Like, oh, I'm here. Let me buckle down, and kind of teaches you the gritty. Oh, I'm not playing. Let me go somewhere else. Take the easy way out versus buckling down, get better, and earn your way through. So,
I agree with you, Joseph. The NIL is really not a bad thing. These kids are, as you said, without the players, there's no college athletics. So I don't think that's too bad of a deal. And hopefully they'll figure the portal out. Nothing's perfect when it starts.
Exactly.
But on that, I do want to ask you, going forward from your college days, tell us about how the draft process went. And then this is something I've always wondered. what's it like when you get the call, or how does it even happen when you know you're going up, getting called up to the bigs? And tell us what that was like.
So it's a little different for everybody, and like you talked about, it's trying to duck the sun a little. It's a little different right now, where they're trying. Obviously, like you got football, basketball, everything's televised, everything's out there. Baseball, I think they televise the first round now, to where there are people on TV, and there's also if you're not on TV, it's videotaped. Somebody put you on there. I'm gonna really date myself right now, and when I got drafted, it was 2002. We were probably still on like AOL dial-up, to be honest. So everything was a little bit slower.
Yeah.
And the first round it would go by in the matter of like 3-4 minutes. So you're talking 30 picks go by in just a few minutes. So they get on and it's pick, next pick, next pick, next pick. And I remember I was in my parents' house there in town, and it's on, and I feel like the draft's supposed to start a certain time. I probably wasn't paying attention time, talking to somebody, and then all of a sudden some time goes by and the phone rings, and it was my agent, not technically at the time yet because you're not allowed to have one, calls, and he goes, "Oh, how do you feel about where you picked?" And I was like, "Where did I get picked? Who got me?" And he was like, "You weren't watching." I was like, "No, we had people over and it was kind of a lot going on." And he told me it was 24th by the A's. And I was like, "Oh, okay." But before that process, it's a little different because there's a lot of talks about who's going to draft you, who might draft you. Like, these teams are looking at high school players, or these teams do this. And, these teams like to draft hitters and however it is. The whole time going up to the draft, I thought I was going to get drafted. I think it was 18th by the White Sox. And they actually, they were talking, and they were like, "Yeah, we're probably going to take you." Last second, they pulled a complete switch and drafted a left-handed reliever from like San Diego State, I believe it was. So then I wind up falling 6 picks to 24. So it's an interesting process how it works. And you see that sometimes on TV. I think it was the quarterback last year at Kentucky, right? Thought he was going to go pretty high, and then he keeps like slipping. It's a crazy thing. The draft day, you have this hope that it's going to be somebody or somebody else, and things get wild sometimes. You might go higher, you might go lower. It's a crazy kind of mental process to have to go through, and not knowing where you're going to go and have no say in it either. It's zero say going in, and it's just whoever wants you gets you, and then that's where you have to go. Oh, and then
so what about
the
when
second
you get
part,
the call?
getting called up? Getting called up it's a little different for everybody. Usually, minor league managers like to play a joke on the players, that it's that they're getting sent down or getting released or something like that, or you pull some kind of joke. They'll be like, "Oh, the organizations decide to make a move, and unfortunately, you won't be here anymore." And the kind of player, it'll be something like that, and then the players kind of gives what's going on, or tricks them they got traded, and then be like, "No, you're going to the big leagues." Mine and about 2 or 3 other guys. It was 2004. We were in AAA all year, and we had just won the AAA World Series, I guess, whatever it is, the title for AAA. And the coach gets up in front, and we're all celebrating, and he was like, giving his speech, and says, we had a great year. We accomplished our goal. We won the title. And then you go, some players had some great years, but it's not over for some of them, and mentioned the players going on, and that was one of it. And he was like, you guys are getting on a flight for Seattle tomorrow. And so the celebration got bigger. Found out we were going to get called up, and I got to do it with 2 or 3 other guys, so that made it pretty special too.
Man, that's all. What were your emotions when you finally heard you're going up?
It was kind of weird because I was already celebrating what we had won. I was enjoying that moment of like what we'd spent all year trying to do in the minor leagues to win this as a team. And we had a pretty close group that year, even for minor leagues, which is sometimes weird because there's guys going up, down, in, out, all that. But we had a pretty tight group. And so we were enjoying that together. And then so it wasn't that like single emotion of just getting called up. So I already had a joy of getting getting this win, and then this happening. And then you get there, it just kind of turns into all business again. It's not, I hate to say it just goes on, but it does. It's more of like the after, when you sit back and think about it, like how special of a moment it is, more than in the moment. Like a prime example, this past season, I went to the Phillies when they were playing the Braves, and they wind up clinching the division in Philly, and we were there, and some of the other players I was there with. And the stadium was rocking, it was loud. You couldn't even talk to each other. And one of the players turned to me and goes, "Was it this crazy when we were here?" And I was like, "I think it was. We just didn't notice because we're in the moment. If we notice how crazy it is, then we're not going to be able to succeed." So that's kind of like the good and the bad thing of being on the field. And when you're so locked into the moment, you don't notice all these outside distractions, if you will. But then you step outside and you get to kind of realize, like, wow, we got to do this. That was pretty crazy.
Joseph, I want to ask you this. So I want to know, a little bit about your rookie season, how it went, some things that happened, and kind of two-parted. What is, the day of an athlete, like a professional athlete? How is a day for you, or a week? Like, how does that pan out, and what are some things you do?
So, a day in the life. I hate to say it like this. It turns into a job. It is what it is. I mean, but at the same time, you're doing it, you're living it, you're breathing it, you're like, you have to be almost consumed by it. Like, every moment of your day is leading up to it. Even going back the night before, like the rest you're going to get, the amount of hours sleep you're going to get, all of that leads into the next morning waking up. Okay, what is, kind of what you're putting in your body, the food I'm eating, and then it's kind of everything is planned out onto when I need to be at the field. So a typical major league game usually starts at 7:00, whatever time zone you're in. So 7:00, usually it's a little bit different for every player. Some players will start getting there about 12, 1:00. Between 12 and 2 is when players will show up. More around like that 1:00 period is when they'll show up. Players get to the field. Everybody has their own routine. A lot of video being watched of yourself, of the opposing team, doing your own scouting report, even though you're hounded scouting reports. You're doing your workouts. There's lots of individual work that happens all the way leading up through. And then all of that leads into, then you have your team stretch, whether you're hitter or pitcher, leads into BP, starting pitchers throwing their bullpens, relievers are getting their work in, you're coming back in, and then coming back in, it's snack, and then, okay, now it's time to turn into it's game mode. What am I doing to prep? Some people, starting to get loose again as training room work, pregame work, whatever that is. And that starting pitchers, it changes every day. And then you're taking that all the way right at game time, and then game time 7 to roughly 10:00, and then post game, you got your post game work in, your post game stretch, post game conditioning, whatever it may be that you're doing that day. Some people lift before, some people lift after. Everybody has a little bit different routine. Grab dinner, wind up getting back to if you're at home. If you're on the road, a hotel around like 11:30 midnight. So you're getting the field at 1. You're leaving around like 11:00 at night. So and then basically rinse and repeat. Do it every day.
So Joseph, what was it like going in? Of course, I'll say this: somebody called me. I remember when you got called up by the drafted, and then somebody called me and was like, "Man, Joseph's on TV pitching." And so I ran to the TV and turned it on, and I don't know if it was your first game or not. I don't recall that in depth, but man, it was so exciting to watch all of that unfold. And I know this is probably kind of a silly question in one sense, but you spoke about being a professional and getting in the moment, getting in the routine of it. But what was it like walking in and competing against and being teammates with these guys you watched on TV? Now you're one of them. I'm sure you figure out, hey, these are just normal dudes. But what was that like? Was that different at first?
It was. I mean, so the good thing about baseball is you kind of have this like building moment of where other sports are a little different. Like if you go from high school football to the SEC, let's say, you're going from, a couple thousand people, maybe wherever, depending on where you play, to tens of thousands, 80,000 people, whatever. So there's that huge jump where, everything's on TV.
Right.
And then basketball, kind of the same, you're kind of making these high school jumps to college where everything's on TV. There's like that huge jump in there. And then going straight to, like, some people are so used to it, where baseball is almost like you get this like little buildup. High school baseball is not super popular. Not a lot of people watch, definitely not televised. You go to college, maybe some games are on TV, but not a whole lot, maybe a local network, maybe like SEC network for me, because I played in the SEC. Then you go back to the minors, which nobody watches minors at all. So and then at each level you go up, it gets a little bit bigger, a few more people there. Where the big AAA cities you get, there's a few thousand people, and then you get to the big leagues. So there's this kind of like road you take that kind of progresses you toward that. So by the time you get to the big leagues, you don't notice it anymore. You're kind of just playing the game. And then also you have spring training, and odds are you've probably had spring training with some of the big leaguers, with some of the other guys. You've probably already faced some of them. So you kind of got the first spring training jitters out of facing all these guys and realizing they're just players just like you. They're not any better than you. They're just older, and people already know who they are. But for me, I do remember I had, I'm very fortunate. I played with and against a lot of guys that have been very good. Quite a few guys are in the Hall of Fame now, and there's a few more that will be there. But I had a couple. So you actually touched on it earlier. You remember you said seeing in a Frank Thomas shirt. So I got to play with Frank Thomas. Right. So Frank was one of my he was one of my favorite players growing up. I remember I collected his cards. Like I said, had his shirt. I probably had his cleats, the whole deal. Fast forward, God, what was this, like 7th, 8th grade or so? I mean, fast forward, 10, 15 years, whatever the time is, and then he's my teammate. So that was kind of one of those like surreal moments where like you see him walk in first, that kind of hits like, oh. And then you realize like, okay, he's another player. You start talking to him, you have lunch with him, you hang out with him, you have dinner with him, and he winds up being one of your friends. I just saw him not long ago at the SEC tournament. We sat and just talked and hung out like he never was my favorite player. It was just, we became, what it was. And another one was one of the first guys that I faced that was kind of that moment, had to like kind of step back a second, was when I faced Griffey. I faced Griffey when he was with the Reds, and the iconic hat backwards. Everybody wore their hat backwards, wanted to hit like Griffey. I remember. So he steps in the box, and I was like, hold on a second. Like, all right, it's another player. Focus in on the catcher and go about our business. Don't make the player bigger than they are. Don't make the moment bigger than it is. That's a thing that you have to try to learn to do as you progress and in sports, and learn to try to dial everything down. Don't make any moment too big. Bases loaded, 2 outs. Full count in the World Series. It's not a big moment. It's another pitch.
Man, that's a great perspective. And I guess I want to jump into getting to play in the World Series. I mean, what a tremendous opportunity. Then y'all were fortunate enough to win it. I want to know about the home run. I know that's probably a typical fan question, but do you even at that point take part in batting practice?
So after high school, so I hit in high school. I would consider myself a good hitter in high school, but you get to college and you don't hit anymore. Everybody's kind of, obviously the Ohtani's made it more famous now with being two-way player, but not a lot of guys do that. There's maybe a guy on a team that does it. Maybe some teams don't have anybody that do it at all. So it's very rare. So then I go to college and I'm just pitching. I get drafted by an American League team. And at the time, American League DH and National League didn't, where everybody does now. So didn't hit through the minor leagues. First 3.5 years, didn't really hit in the big leagues. Couple of at-bats in the interleague games where, to your point, no batting practice, no practice, nothing. They just stick you in there and you got to figure it out. And you go from, I hadn't touched the bat in 8 years to facing big league pitching. It's kind of a shock. Seeing guys throwing mid-90s with nasty sliders, and you haven't hit since somebody throwing 80 with and probably had no curveball.
Right.
So going over the National League, you're hitting every game you're pitching now. So there was a focus on hitting. So when I first got traded over, I tried to really take extra time when you talk about that prep for each day of showing up. I made sure I showed up early, and I would go to the batting cage with like the hitting coach and be like, all right, for me, it was just taking pride in my craft, even though I wasn't a hitter and I could have just struck out every single time and everybody been fine with it. It's not what you're supposed to do. But for me, I looked at it as it's going to carry over into my pitching. It might give me a couple extra innings. I might come up with runners on second and third and 2 outs. And instead of striking out, what if I'm able to get jammed and put a ball in play and get a hit and score a run that's going to give me a win? I looked at it at that point of view and just tried to take it a little more serious. And so did start doing some work. And then obviously I get to the World Series, and I think it's more luck than anything. But it goes back to what I said. I did put in some hard work up to it. It wasn't supposed to happen by any means. I mean, it's a super rare thing. I think it was lucky, like I said, but at the same time, I think right place, right time. Broken clock is right twice a day, however you want to look at it. But it was, and also it wasn't. It go back into what I said earlier. It was one of those moments that I didn't get to super enjoy. Because as soon as I hit it, I come around the bases and, the dugout's going crazy and they're celebrating. All I could think about is I got to go back out and pitch. If I go out, that made the game 6-2 at that point. I said, if I go out and give up 4 runs, we wind up losing the game. That's all for nothing. I can't focus on that. I can't enjoy the moment. I can't get too up, can't get too down. So my whole thought process is let's find the catcher. Let's go over the scouting report. Who are the first 3 guys up? How are we going to approach this next inning? So it was kind of almost this unenjoyable, amazing moment because I had so much work left to do.
Right. I guess you can look back and enjoy it now.
Yeah, that's the idea. Is you look back and you try to remember the moment, and I just remember hitting it, and I was having this conversation with another pitcher not long ago, and he was like, "What did you feel?" And I was like, "I didn't feel anything." And he was like, right. And he knew what I was talking about. I was like, every other time I took a swing and hit the ball, I was getting jammed. My hands were stinging. I'm used to getting swinging and missing, getting jammed. This was actually a time I hit it where I was supposed to. And you just feel the ball come off. You see it take that flight. And you're like, oh, oh crap. I think that just happened.
Yeah, for sure.
Surprised as anybody.
Right.
Joe, you played for 7 different franchises throughout your career. I'm going to ask you 2 questions here. Out of those 7 franchises, which one is your favorite? And also, I want to ask this one. You were talking about, having to pitch against Ken Griffey, guys like that. Who is the best player you would say you ever had to pitch against? And those are my 2 for you.
Best organization. I mean, there's a couple that definitely I think separate. And I mean, there's a few, and I had great teammates through them all. Certain guys that I still keep in touch with all across the board from different teams. But the A's hold a special place because they were the first team I got called up with. I guess technically they're the local team now, or one of them. But at the end of the day, it's I had a great time in 2016 with the Dodgers. Have some really great fans from that team. But I spent the longest chunk of my career in Philly with the Phillies. Like you said, we won a World Series in 2008. We went there and went to the World Series again in 2009 and lost. We won the division every year I was there. I got to play with guys Roy Halladay and Cliff Lee and Jimmy Rollins, Chase Utley. I mean, so many Pedro Martinez, so many guys, Hall of Famers and World Series, Gold Gloves, MVPs, like you name it. But we had actually a great group of guys there. We got along, still keep in touch with them. And Philly is notorious sports city. They can be very good, very bad. We were very good while we were there. So it always still holds a special place, even when I still go back today.
Yeah, I can't see how that wouldn't be a excuse me, how that wouldn't be just a special I can't imagine what it'd be like to win a World Series, but having those guys, the relationship, obviously, just by talking to you a few minutes you have with that team, and I saw online there where y'all, obviously get back together on a regular basis, and that's awesome. It'd be hard to choose a franchise over that, no doubt. I do want to do just a couple of shout outs. I'm monitoring some people that's tuning in, and a name I think you'll know, Miss Joretta Alexander is watching, and she says to tell you hi. Brandon Jaggers and a lot of different people I could say their name. Let me ask you this, Joseph, being out in California, do you keep up with what's going on much in Edmonson County anymore?
I try a little bit, mostly through my parents because they still live there. It's mostly through them telling me. They'll be like, oh, there's this, kid that's pretty good here now, or this is how some of the teams are doing. Mostly through that, they kind of still give me the rundown on what's going on, and they'll say, oh, I saw so and so the other day, and so they're the ones that are keeping me filled in these days.
That's good. That's good. So you retired in 2017. Mm-hmm. Is that right?
Yep.
Yeah. I just want to make sure my facts are correct.
17 was the last year I played. I tried to go back in 2018 and play again. Wasn't in the cards. Wound up being a little more injured than I thought from the year before. So it kind of wound up being those were the end of the days. But yeah, 17 was my last year playing Washington.
And I know as I, followed your career and kept up with you, and then as I was going back to refamiliarize myself leading into this, you're extremely durable. And, you were fortunate not to have a tremendous amount of injuries, unless I'm reading it wrong. And I no doubt that credits what you talked about earlier with a lot of the hard work and the discipline that you put forward. So tell us about what you're doing now, your venture now, and how you kind of got into that. I've read a little bit and familiarize myself a little, but I want to hear about it from you if you don't mind.
Yeah. So I was fortunate enough that I played 13 years, 7 teams, and escaped with no surgeries. For a pitcher, that's pretty rare. Fairly durable. I had 1 year where I missed a good chunk of year, but that was about it. I think I had like 2 other stints where I wasn't able to play for a little bit. Had a pulled oblique 1 year. The year I missed the whole year was my elbow. And then my last year was the one that did me in. I think I missed like 2 weeks with some shoulder problems, with I found out wound up being a torn labrum. And then trying to play the next year. That's what did me in. But now, like I said, live in Napa, have a vineyard, make wine. It was just, I guess, it's so funny. Try to tell when to tell this. Started coming to Napa, enjoying wine, and it's peaceful out here. Like I said, it's a small town, got small town vibes. Wine, the whole process was something I kind of fell in love with. The farming of it, the winemaking, all those things. And then fast forward so many years, and I realized that I'm not going to play forever. As an athlete, we always feel like we're going to do it forever, right? You just feel like your time's not going to end. I don't know at what point it hit me, and I realized like the window's kind of closing. I've already been playing them like 10 years. Like this isn't going to keep going on. What am I going to do when I'm done? Like, well, what else am I passionate about? Do I want to coach? Do I want to, do something broadcasting or something? And I just felt like all that wasn't. Even though I coached plenty with the kids, wasn't in the cards for me. It was doing wine. So, like I said, bought a vineyard, and I'll tell this. So my funny story. So I buy a vineyard, and I wind up telling my parents. I was like, hey, I bought a vineyard in California. My dad looks at me and goes, hold on a second. Growing up, your whole life, you complain about having to work in the garden, do all this farm work. Now you want to retire and be a farmer. And I said, yeah, it's a little different though. So essentially that's what I do now. Spend some days out here and in the vineyard a little bit, and And like I said, most of the time after that, it's still being involved in sports. At the end of the day, it just keeps. It's honestly my first true passion is being an athlete and being a baseball player. And I still enjoy trying to spread the knowledge onto my daughters playing softball, my son playing baseball. So I still do enjoy that, but also I have the wine thing that I enjoy as well. It's kind of my next new passion in life to try to learn and grow.
Yeah. So have you mastered the fast pitch softball wind up, or I don't know what the proper terminology is, but.
So yeah, so my older daughter pitches, my middle daughter, she's kind of learning, but she catches. I think she knows more than I know about it now, and she can definitely throw better than me like that. So a lot of our conversations now are what goes on between the ears, and that's kind of, I'm really enjoying that part of our not father-daughter relationship, more kind of coach-player, but obviously still being her dad and trying to teach her those things that maybe I can give her a leg up on everybody else because of what I did and was able to, I'll try to approach her with, this is pretty advanced, but try to take it and be, start teaching her how to take a second, when things are going bad, slow down the game, don't make it too fast in your head, just little things like that, learning counts and whatever. So she's definitely bypassed my knowledge in that, and I'm not able to do that, but like I said, those little things, hopefully I can pass those on.
Right. Joseph, when did you realize that you had something special or something extra? What age were you when you thought, you know what, I've got a chance here? Of course, everybody, or not everyone, but most kids dream of being a professional athlete. But when did you think, you know what, I've actually got a chance here?
So I think there was two different points in my, we'll call it career or life, that I knew I had a chance at the next level. One of them when I was probably when I was 16 there in town. I played for the Kentucky Colonels there in Bowling Green. We're all, it's the American Legion team where all the local schools get together. So we were playing. So we had a couple guys from Edmonds County, Franklin Simpson, Bowling Green, Greenwood, Warren East, Warren Central. So all the surrounding schools. There was one or two guys off of all those schools to make up a team. And when we were 16, we were playing a tournament. It was there at Western, and we had won the state to go to the regional, and we're playing the best team. We're the best team in Kentucky. We're playing Tennessee, Georgia, Alabama, Florida, South Carolina, probably Arkansas. So the whole Southeast region we're playing. And I come out and I throw the first game. We're facing supposed to be the best team in it from Florida. And I wind up throwing a complete game shutout against them. Double elimination. We lose our next two. This team comes in and says, hey, if we come back and win, and they were that confident they were going to win it. They said, when we win, we want you to come with us to the World Series. And I was like, what do you mean? And it was like, well, there's a rule for moving on. You can take a player with you from the tournament that's not from your area. And I was like, absolutely. So I remember traveling with them, and it was actually a great team. There wound up being 5 first-rounders off of that team. So it was a really good team. They came back, won, wound up moving on. And so that was actually one of the first times it was like, wait a minute, hold on. Some of these other kids had brothers that were playing at Florida State and Florida off of that team. And it was like, it was kind of that, wait a minute, I got maybe a chance to play at college at 16. Lucky enough to make that happen. The second time when I knew I had a really good chance to play at the next level was after my sophomore year in college at Kentucky. I played in Cape Cod, and out of college, you either play on Team USA, which is like the upper 15 guys, 20 guys, whatever it is, play there, or you play in Cape Cod. That's kind of like the next step of that's the best of the best from college. So I got to go to the Cape Cod League and came out of the Cape Cod League, I think 5th or 6th best prospect, something like that. And then they start releasing going into the season, draft prospects. And it was potential first round draft picks. And my name was in that list. And that was kind of that next moment of like, oh, there's a real chance to be able to play at the next level as well. So I think those are the two moments for me. And then everything in between for me was just stepping stones, was just putting the work in to get to that. And then you get to that and then set the next goal. Obviously, like you said, as a kid, the dream is to play in the big leagues, and that was the dream. But that was the high dream. The goal below it was to go to college. So you make that one, and then you set the dream. Okay, now it's to get drafted. The next goal, you hit that goal. Now the next goal is to be able to work my way through the minors and make it. You set these small goals, but you still have the big goals at the end, which I think is an important thing. Kind of talking about earlier with athletes is setting goals. What are the goals? You have to have long-term goals and short-term goals, and I think that's kind of more common talk these days than it was then. But I think those were super important. So that was kind of my stepping stone of trying to progress through.
Is there someone that taught you all of this, or did you just pick this up step by step? You were talking about stepping stones. Did you learn all of this, or is this just the wisdom of a retired professional now? It seems like you've always been mature, or at least forward thinking. Is there one mentor or a few mentors that led you along the way to think like this?
I think it just turns into that's good. A lot of it is just learned through trial and error and learning that is the process. And, I think it's much more at that time. I don't think a lot was put into what goes on between the ears as far as like an athlete's development, where I think that's a much bigger thing now. So like for me personally, like getting to the major leagues, we didn't have a lot of, I want to say it wasn't around till like 2015, 16. And like I came in the league in 04, drafted in 02, that they started having sports psychologists that would come in and there was somebody to talk to. And, kind of, because when you hit that level, sometimes, especially like places like Philly, it can be a little bit daunting, going out, giving up game-winning home runs, getting walked off, the crowd's booing you. You just have to self-learn how to handle these things, where now I feel like it's kind of out there, and it's like, oh, this is how we handle that. Here's a few things you can work on to try to help develop. So a lot of it was just learned along the way and thinking back about how I handled it. Honestly, probably getting a little bit lucky. Obviously, good parents in my corner helping me, kind of stay grounded, and definitely helping along the way as well. I think that's always the key to it, is that family environment at home, I think was obviously a major factor in me being able to progress, because there's a lot of players that get drafted, maybe come in a little bit of money or come into the big leagues, and you see that it doesn't happen. It doesn't last very long for them. And it's different reasons. You see people going, bankrupt these days and partying themselves out. And I think a lot of that, comes from, let's make a complete circle, kind of the small town where I grew up, and then, having that family support environment as well.
Joseph, I want to ask you this. We have a few members of our team here in Evans County, the baseball team, watching tonight. They're going into this week. They have 2 big district games against Whitesville Trinity. Kind of, if there's any words of wisdom, anything you want to say to those guys, we got a lot of good players, season we're 2-2 right now. Anything you can wish on them or tell them?
I think, that's a good one. I always try to, I think back to what I said, if you're thinking of, like it's a big district opponent, or we're going in the district or region, or how far you are in advance, don't make any moment bigger than it is. I preach this to my kids all the time, kids I coach, process over result. I'm huge on that now. And that is something that I did not, when you talk about being taught or learn, I had a lot of trouble learning that, because sports are so result oriented, that they don't, especially in like baseball, where it's a game of failure. You're going to fail. If you fail 70% of the time, you're great as a hitter. You're in the Hall of Fame. Like, think what other sport has that much failure and you can still be great. So you have to make all these little moments feel good. If you go up for an at bat and you hit a ball hard and you get out, you had a good process. You had a good at bat. You put a ball on it well. You hit it well. Take that away and make it an enjoyable moment, because it is a game that can really, really drive you down and cause you to just sink into this. And that's why we have slumps. You just sink into this all the time. Or if you have an at bat that wasn't a good at bat, you get jammed, but it happens to bleed over the second baseman's head and you get on. Don't be like, it wasn't a good at bat because I got jammed. Enjoy it because you got a hit, right? But also kind of be realistic and like, there are a couple of things I need to work on. Don't be blinded to, I got a hit and everything's great. But honestly, go in for games, enjoy it, have fun. The more you're able to keep your positive mental talk up, the better chance you have to succeed, if that makes sense. That's what I would be huge on. And that's one thing that, I want to say I struggled with, because I think all athletes do a little bit, because everybody gets in their moments where they're not great. But being able to talk yourself out of it through positive talk, I think is a big one. Go in with a positive that we're going to win, regardless of how it happens. You have to go play the game. Go in with a positive mindset through every time. Every at bat, think you're going to get a hit. Every pitch, think you're going to throw a good pitch, and wipe everything else away. That's really my best advice I can give.
That's great advice. I do have a couple more questions, Joseph. Thank you for taking the time. It's been great to catch up with you. I do have just a couple more. We don't have great baseball records here. I know that probably shocks you, but there's one thing that's been debated a little bit, and I'd like you to clear this up for me. What's the most strikeouts you had at Edmonson County in a game? I'm sure that's probably small pebbles to you, but I think it was the first round of the district game. Someone said maybe against Allen County Scottsville was one game, and then maybe there was another game. So you think it was 17?
I feel like I remember it was 17 in a game. There's a lot of games obviously in between. Try to remember. I feel like I remember throwing a 6-inning game and striking out 17, and it was in Caverna.
Okay.
But it wasn't against them. There was like a tournament, and we played a different team.
Right.
I feel like I remember that one. What do you have?
No, it was 17 or 19, and I was, so I didn't know if there was extra innings or what, but so I'll take it. 17.
It could have been. I remember
that's
17.
A pretty good night.
It could have been 19, but I do remember I had an inning where I had 4 strikeouts. I do remember that. So now you're kind of making me second guess, because I'd like to say it was 19 because that's more, but my head's telling me 17 for whatever reason. And I feel like I remember, like I said, stats weren't really kept in those days, right? We don't have video of anything. Their stats were rare at best. I feel like I remember going into the last inning and having like 16 or 17 strikeouts, and I don't think I got anybody in the last inning. Like, I had a chance to get like even more, and I don't think I struck anybody out. I had struck almost everybody out, or one more than I was supposed to, going into the last, and wind up, I don't want to say falling short. That sounds bad, but and the last inning, not striking anybody or striking one out, and just kind of being like disappointed.
Yeah. When you strike 17 out, you can't say fall short. I mean, yeah. All right, here's another one some people want me to ask you. Who's a couple of your favorite teachers you remember from here?
Oh, gosh, there were so many. It's – God, putting me on the spot right now, huh?
I'm sorry.
Oh, I mean, 7th grade English teacher was pretty good. I think you know who that one is.
Yeah, I know her pretty well.
Right?
Pretty well.
You mentioned Miss Alexander earlier. Your mom, Miss Williams, she was great. I mean, I had so many great teachers.
We were so
and I
fortunate.
think that really goes back to what we talked about earlier, being in a small town, kind of everybody knows everybody's family. And that allows you to have a great connection with your teacher and kind of learn a little bit better versus being, somewhere bigger and nobody knows anybody. It's kind of thought out there, when teachers know
Right.
families and families know families, they probably feel like this. I'm guessing, I never was a teacher. You probably talk about this better. You feel like that kind of personal responsibility to help them grow versus it's just a name on the clipboard that's coming through. So I think that's why it's hard to pinpoint one or two, because you have this kind of close personal relationship where, my parents did, they're friends, or you're friends with their kids and that kind of thing. So you have that. So it makes it really hard to point out just one or two. So I could probably go through a whole list. I could probably set and name every teacher still, but I just think that's important. I keep kind of circling back to the small town thing.
Yeah. Well, Joseph, listen, you've taken up a long time to catch up with me and meet with Joseph Decker, and I can't tell you how much I appreciate it. Hopefully, hey, next time I'm out in California, I'm gonna look you up.
Do it. I'm usually here. I'm probably at a baseball or softball tournament, but I would be here.
Yeah. Listen, thank you so much. Maybe we can have you on another time out in the future.
Yeah.
And it's been great to catch up with you. Hope you and your family continue to do well.
Yeah. Thank you. It was
Joseph,
great catching up with you. Yeah.
I want to say thank you from me as well. Walking onto the baseball field, every week, it's great seeing your name. You got the jersey painted on one of the bricks out there. So I think that's awesome to see. So I want to thank you for being on here and talking to us today.
Yeah, it's good. And I think circle back to what we said earlier. Don't cut your dream off because somebody says you can't do it. I remember, and I don't remember who it was, being high school, saying I wanted to play, baseball in the big leagues, and, not getting laughed at to your face, but almost being like, you should have a more realistic goal because nobody from here has ever done that. Well, there's always a first one from everywhere to do everything. That's kind of the way I look at it. I remember being specifically told that in high school, like, yeah, you should be a little more realistic with your goals because, and I remember it was, they were like, oh, the best person to ever do anything was Tom Vincent to go play football at Vandy, that kind of thing. Or, and it was like, you know what? Well, and you kind of hit that point, like, why not? Why not me?
Why not?
Yeah. Yeah,
Well,
it's not a why. It's a why not.
Yeah. If you can remember who it is, email me. I will tag them when I repost this video.
I couldn't remember. I have no idea. I could have. I don't know if anybody's seen The Last Dance with Michael Jordan, where he basically would make up stuff to help him. I love that how he would use these motivations, and players like that never happened. You just make up. So it could have been something I completely made up to self-motivate. To move along. I don't know.
If it is, it was brilliantly done. Joseph, thank you. It's been great, man. Thank you so much. Good to talk with you again. I really appreciate it.
No, yeah, thank you. Good seeing you again too. Remember the days summer when our moms used to have to go to school. We'd go over to the middle school gym and play basketball all day.
Yes, sir. Hey, still to this day, I remember.
And that's the other thing people ask, like, "Oh, play baseball." No, play every sport. You hear athletes say it all the time that are able to play at high levels. I think I don't think I touched on this. Get as athletic as you can. If that's a goal of yours, and it's not saying you won't make it if you're playing baseball 9 months out of the year as like a 10-year-old. Go play basketball. Go play soccer, go play football, play baseball too. The more athletic, and all of these skills at each sport translate over. The hand-eye coordination in basketball, the footwork of soccer, the footwork in basketball, like all these will translate into all of these other sports and make you a better athlete. Because being able to learn something new is what helps an athlete grow, I think. Because some of the times I see kids and they've only been playing one sport, and then they're 12, 13 years old, they're kind of not able to pick it up as quick as the ones who've been playing 3-4 sports. And it's okay if you're behind. And that's kind of what I touched on earlier. You see kids are behind, they get frustrated, they're behind. Or I know I go through this as a parent. if there's any parents watching, feel like your kid is behind and you're not making the right choices if you want your kid to grow in that sport or whatever it is, it's very tough. But know that is it important that they're winning at 10 or 11 or 12 years old? No. Some of the best players at 12 don't even play in high school or after that.
True.
So it's about keeping that growth, being athletic, being a sponge, being able to continue to develop. That's where I tell my daughter this all the time, and my son. It's not where you start; it's where you finish.
Mm-hmm.
So
that's great. That's great advice. I hope a lot of people are watching and listening to this because it's something we preach. Kyle Pierce is our athletic director, does a great job, and he tells the athletes and the coaches all the time, play the sports. Go play all the sports. If you want to play one, go play it. So I appreciate you sharing that message. Yeah, I mean, I remember those days, the summer days back in the gym. I also remember the Mortal Kombat days when we played Mortal Kombat. You're the one that taught me the blood code. All the guys our age remember that. I don't know how long it's been since you thought about that, but oddly enough, I actually looked the code up to see if I could remember it, and I couldn't. But I looked that up as well. And also my dad
I think I still remember it, unfortunately.
Throw it at me.
Is that the one? It was down, up, left, A right down. Was that one?
Yeah. Hey, well done, sir. Well done.
I haven't played in forever. That becomes the memory. That becomes thinking of, and I've always been blessed with a good memory, and I was able to always take that into sports as well. Being able to remember, I faced this hitter 3 years ago, and this is what I threw him. So a lot of times it becomes what's between the ears, not necessarily what your body can output. That's a big one I preach too. Just because somebody's more athletic, bigger, stronger, faster, doesn't mean you can't beat them. Doesn't mean you can't win, because there's a lot that goes on up here that people can outsmart somebody.
Yeah, and to put for those kids, Joseph mentioned the kids in perspective, that was about 95 probably that we're talking about. He still remembers the code. That's pretty impressive. My dad also brought up to me a minute ago that you play. Of course, I remember playing basketball with you. You were a heck of a basketball player too. You all had an undefeated freshman season. I don't know if you remember that.
We had a good team. We had a fun freshman year. Yeah, I don't remember being undefeated. I wasn't much of a scorer. I was kind of the brute guy that had to try to push everybody around.
Yeah, you and Mickey Johnson and old Jeremy Vincent inside.
Yeah, they're like, let everybody else shoot. You guys use your fouls. You three boys use your fouls.
Yep, that's right. I remember it well. Listen, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. Hope you get to catch up with you more sometime down the line.
Absolutely.
We appreciate you being on tonight.
Thank you. No, it was awesome. Thank you.
Thanks, Joseph.
Yep.
See you. All right. What an awesome – I was hoping to be on 30 minutes, Joseph, and we were on over an hour.
It was worth every minute.
So you just spent an hour. Yeah, you just spent an hour with a World Series champion that, in my mind, the message I got was, why not? Mm-hmm. That was maybe the most profound line that he spoke. Yeah. Why not? If you fail 70% of the time as a hitter in baseball, you're a Hall of Famer. That was another line that stuck out to me. And I think it's so important. I hope every young person that we have, and well, I just hope everybody of all ages, because here's the reality of it. Everyone's facing adversity. Mm-hmm. Everyone's facing people that doubt them, and everyone is looking for motivation. So something also that he said, process over result, will be something that sticks with me for a long time. Joseph Blanton was always a good person, still is, obviously. He was always very, just like he was, warm, fun, genuine, and I have a lot of good memories. So it was really neat to get to catch up with him. I do want to thank again our sponsors for making this show possible. And I do want to mention a little more in depth of the Morris Promo division. They offer any type of promotional products, items that can be logoed, pins, bags, drinkware, paper products, trade shows, setups, business cards. And then on the design tee portion, custom apparel and hats, direct garment printing, embroidery, direct-to-film screen printing, online stores, and much more. We appreciate them. Braden's Blessings, Lake Forest Recruiting, Scott Lindsay and Rafferty, C&A Plumbing.
I have one as well.
The more Kevin Alexander text line. Go ahead.
Also, Grayville Funeral Home, dedicated to those we serve in Brownsville. If you want to contact them, 270-597-2149. Something else I want to say is I feel like a lot of people coming into this tonight to watch, their goal, let's hear what Joe has to say about his career in the MLB. But we've had a lot of people, but I think Joe gave let me try to word this right. He gave a lot of great motivation, a lot of good things he said that I think will stick with a lot of people. So, obviously wanted to hear his career, his stories there, but he did that, and he also paired it with, great wordplay and things he said. So tonight was an amazing episode, man.
Oh, man. I mean, one thing that he said that I'm sitting here thinking while he's talking, I'm like, I can apply this to my career tomorrow. The process, putting in the extra work toward whatever it is the work. He didn't say it this way, but work before pleasure. It's not. It doesn't mean you can't have fun, but put the work in. You've got to put in to get better at whatever your craft is. And he was a professional baseball player. I'm a professional educator. You are working toward being a professional sports broadcaster, or sports marketer or podcaster. Yeah. All of us can use what he said tonight to improve our practice. And that's one thing I really took from it. I appreciate the fact of all his successes, he's still just a common person. Yeah. And that means a whole lot. You can tell how he lit up when he talked about his kids. And I know that feeling. All of us that are parents know that. So just a fun episode for me tonight. Mm-hmm. Joseph, bring us home. I do want to say this before you do. We have our shows on YouTube at the Wildcat Alley, on Twitter at the Wildcat Alley, and on my personal Facebook. Please go and share this episode. I'd love for as many people as possible to watch it. Just a great episode. Joseph Decker, bring us home tonight.
Thank you once again, everyone, for tuning in tonight and watching. Make sure to go share. I want to say this also. I'm pretty sure Tuesday night we'll be joined by Miss Massey and Michaela Hogg to talk about softball and how their season's going so far, if I'm correct. That's right.
That is correct. We will put out a time. Coach Massey has been gracious enough to let us – we'll get more information out to you, but we want to make sure we get her on and Michaela to be interviewed and preview our softball. We'll be setting up a time to also do that with baseball. Mm-hmm. And Tuesday night works out. Let us find out what time they'll be out of practice and at home, and we will let everyone know what time our show will go on. Go ahead, Joseph.
Yeah, that's about all I have to say. Thank you once again, everyone, for tuning in, and we'll see you guys Tuesday night.
Good night, everybody.